Hello students, this is lesson U1A01d. Hopefully by the end of the video you should be able to say to yourself, I can prove angles congruent. So let's take a look at the examples that we're going to cover in this video. I encourage you to compare and contrast the examples that is reviewed in this video with the examples that were reviewed in the previous video, U1A01c, where you had to prove segments congruent. Even though in this video we're talking about proving angles congruent, the skills and the concepts are all very, very similar in nature. It's just with a different format, with a different presentation. So let's take a look. So what I have right now is a bunch of angles, a bunch of line segments, and they're all joined together at point B there, as you can see. Pause the video for a moment and copy down the diagram, as well as create the statement of reason chart, and try to reason for yourself why the angles specified there are congruent. So after having some thought on this, after coming back from the pause, hopefully you guys had some time to think about this. You're told that angle ABC is congruent to DBE, which are these two angles over here, which I am going to indicate with the red tick marks here. And I'm going to use one tick mark. And there's an angle in between those two angles that are in red. I am going to use another color, and I'm going to indicate that with that. So our task here, we're tasked to figure out what is angle ABD, whether or not that is congruent to CBE, angle CBE. You're tasked to explaining why those two angles are congruent. So if I look at these two angles, which I'm highlighting in pink, right, how many tick marks are there in total? It looks like there are 3 tick marks. If I'm highlighting over here with some of those two angles together, it looks like, once again, there are 3 tick marks. So intuitively, it should make sense why those two angles indicated in our proof should be congruent. Now, how do we articulate this? It's the same kind of idea as in the previous lesson, actually. So what we want to do, if we're trying to prove angle ABD is congruent to angle CBE, and we recognize that angle ABD is made up of 2 different angles, it would be wise, again, to utilize that strategy to inform the reader what exactly is angle ABD made up of. Angle ABD is made up of angle ABC plus angle CBD. And similarly, we also recognize that angle CBE is equal to angle CBD plus angle DBE. Now, these two statements are true, and there's no need for any prior information for these two statements to be true. The only reasoning is that postulate, right? So, which is why this usually comes in the beginning of a proof. We can establish this without any prior information. So this is true because of the angle addition postulate. And both lines 2 and 3 have the same exact reason, that these two statements are true because of the angle addition postulate. Now, recognizing, okay, that, again, there is a small difference, but, and we're going to regard this congruent symbol here, okay, as, we're going to treat it as an equality symbol, even though we know technically it's not, okay? So we recognize that angle ABC, okay, is going to be equal to angle DBE. But we also recognize that there's an angle in between here. Which angle am I referring to? I'm referring to this angle here that's in green, right? So that angle there is sandwiched in between, okay? So I recognize, okay, that angle needs to be in play here because that angle is actually a part of angle ABD and a part of angle CBE. So I'm just going to simply place that in there so I know that angle CBD is going to be equal to angle CBD. And this is, again, a standalone fact that something will equal itself, and this is true because of the reflexive property. What we can do to this, okay, right now, is I want you to observe closely here on line 1 and on line 4. we're treating these as equality statements, and as equality statements, they are going to be treated as equations. This, in turn, line 1 and line 4, is, in fact, a system of equation. As a matter of fact, all 4 lines here are, in fact, systems of equations. But I'm going to focus my attention on only line 1 and line 4. Why? Because if I want you to observe closely here, if I take ABC, which is on the left side of that equation, and CBD, which is on the left side of that equation, and add them together, and then I want to do the same thing on the right side. The right side of that equation, I want to add that to the right side of this equation. If I do this, I will end up with angle ABC plus angle CBD is equal to angle CBD plus DBE. And this is true because of addition between lines 1 and line 4. We're adding line 1 and line 4 together. All right, so now that I recognize this as truth, okay, how can I then show that those two things are, in fact, congruent? Well, if I observe closely one more time, right, I'm going to notice in blue now, the left side here, this equation, right, that expression there, wait a minute, where in the two-column proof do I have this? Where in the two-column proof do I have ABC plus CBD is equal to? Oh yeah, that's right here. Those two things that are highlighted in blue are going to be equivalent. And one more time, in another color, in yellow, okay, I recognize that this statement over here, in yellow, I recognize that this statement over here is going to be equivalent to, oh yeah, that's right, it's going to be equivalent to this that's in yellow. All right, so if I take that understanding now, right, angle ABC plus angle CBD, this therefore will equal to ABD. Angle ABD will be equivalent to angle CBE. This is true because of substitution. And this is true because of substitution of which lines specifically? I am substituting lines 2 and 3 into line 5. And remember, there is a subtle difference between equality and congruence. But again, for all our purpose, we're going to treat equality and congruence the same. So we're going to say that they're congruent rather than equal, okay? All right, so that's the proof right there. That angle ABD is going to be congruent to CBE. Let's take a look at question number 2. Again, I encourage you to pause the video and compare and contrast this example with question 1 from the previous video. Okay, so let's take a look at this guy. Again, pause the video and try to copy down the diagram as well as the statement of reason chart there, and try to analyze this diagram to prove that statement. So hopefully you had some time to do that. I know that ELZ, angle ELZ, which I am going to mark in red, is going to be congruent to this angle over here, which I am also going to be marking in red. Our goal is to show that this angle here in green is going to be the same as this angle in green. So once again, we're going to try and prove why those angles in green are going to be congruent. So how are we going to do this? Well, again, using the same strategy as before, okay? This time, I'm given information about ELZ. That angle there is made up of 2 other angles, isn't it? It's made up of angle ELI and angle ILZ. It's made up of those 2 angles. Similarly, I know that ILA is made up of angle ELI. I'm sorry, angle ILZ and angle ZLA. All right, so remember, keep in mind, our goal is to show that the angles in green, angle ELI and angle ZLA, are congruent. That is our goal right now. And again, keeping in mind that these things are all equations, right? And if we were to treat this all as a system of equation, then pretty much that's the bulk of the understanding. So if that's the case, right, wait a minute. I have a lot of information here now. If you look at this closely here, I'm going to highlight this. I know that angle ELZ is made up of this angle, right? That sum there is equal to ELZ. So where else do I have that? Oh, I have ELZ over here. I also have the sum of these angles over here, okay, is equal to ILA. Where else do I see ILA? Oh yeah, I see that here. So for my fourth line, I encourage you to pause the video. What should I write next? Oh yeah, so wait a minute. The information that's in pink, okay, they are all the same, right? So I can say angle ELI plus angle ILZ will be equivalent to that stuff that's there in green. ILZ plus angle ZLA. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so that I have enough room. Here we go. Okay, so I know that has to be true. What has to be the reason for this? Oh, look at this. I got a little ahead of myself. So what are the reasons for lines 2 and 3? The reasons for lines 2 and 3, they are angle addition postulate, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. So they are there. What's the reason for line number 4? Line number 4 is going to be a series of substitution. So it's going to be substituting. We are substituting lines 2 and 3 into line 1. Remember, our goal, our objective, is to show, that ELI is congruent to ZLA. But recognizing, wait a minute, in yellow, wait, don't I have these two things here? Aren't these two angles the same? Well, you're absolutely right. So because those two angles are the same, I'm going to get rid of them then, right? So I know that angle ILZ is going to equal to angle ILZ. And this is, again, a standalone fact. This is reflexive. So if I take lines 4 and line 5 and subtract them by one another, what will be the end result then? I will end up with angle ELI is equal to angle ZLA. And remember, we're treating equality the same as congruent, so I'm just going to write congruent there. So this is true because of, again, subtraction between lines 4 and line 5. And there you go. One more time, I encourage you to rewatch this video and to compare and contrast the two examples demonstrated in this video to the two examples that were demonstrated in lesson U1A01C.